All right, welcome to your deep dive. We're going deep into the food industry this time.
Buckle up.
Yeah, we've got documentaries, we've got Food Inc., the classic, and the new sequel, Food Inc. 2, that just came out.
Yeah.
Plus some research, some academic stuff.
That's right. We're going to cover all the angles.
We're talking about corporate power. We're talking about, is my food safe? Should I be worried about the workers who made my food? And we're also going to be talking about how the food industry uses science to make us crave more than we need.
It's true. I mean, it's not just about what you eat. It's about the
Yeah,
how the whole system behind your food works, from farm to grocery store and even to your brain.
absolutely. And Food Inc., back in 2008, I feel like that really shook things up.
For sure, groundbreaking.
It revealed so much about our food system, and now Food Inc. 2 just dropped this year, and it feels like the sequel, stakes are higher, right?
Fully. It's not just about production methods anymore.
Right.
It's about how corporations have gotten even more powerful and how they influence the entire system, even up to the government.
They're even influencing the government. It's crazy.
I mean, it's really about control. And since the first film, it's only gotten more consolidated. A few companies calling the shots.
Wow.
A good example is the beef industry.
Okay.
Did you know just 4 companies control a staggering 85% of beef processing?
What, 4 companies? 85%? That's crazy.
Yeah, and that kind of control can really affect everything, from the quality of your meat to the prices you see at the store.
It really makes you think. I mean, I knew that corporations had power,
Of course.
but 85% of the beef market? I don't know. That's a little unsettling.
Yeah, and it raises all sorts of questions about competition and fairness in the food system.
Right.
And this lack of diversity, it also creates these vulnerabilities. Think back to the pandemic. Food Inc., too, has this crazy story about managers at Tyson Foods, one of those beef giants we were just talking about. And they were allegedly placing bets on how many of their workers would get sick with COVID.
I remember that part. That was
It was
disturbing.
messed up, right? And it really highlights how sometimes profit gets put ahead of worker safety.
For sure. And the pandemic in general, it really just exposed how fragile our food system is.
Absolutely, those empty shelves, the supply chain disruption.
It wasn't just about empty shelves. It was about, real people's lives.
Totally.
From the farmers to the grocery store workers. And they were all impacted by these big decisions.
Absolutely. And Food Inc., too.
Yeah.
It really drives this point home. Remember that part about farms destroying perfectly good food?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, people were struggling to find groceries.
That just seems so wrong.
I know, right? It's this tactic called supply manipulation, so they artificially reduce the supply to drive up prices,
Wow.
even if it means that some people go hungry. So it really makes you question, what's considered waste versus actual need.
I know. And it really just makes you think twice about everything you buy at the store.
Absolutely, you really start to pay attention.
And speaking of choices, can we talk about ultra-processed foods? I'm going to admit, I love a good bag of chips.
Oh, it doesn't, right?
But what really struck me in Food Inc. 2 and some of the research we have is that it's not just about willpower.
Yeah.
Like these foods, they're literally designed to make us overeat.
It's true, these ultra-processed foods, UPFs as they're called,
UPFs. Yeah.
they trigger these very specific responses in our brains that make them almost irresistible.
Right. And Food Inc. 2, they said that just one extra serving of these UPFs per day is linked to an 18% higher risk of dying from any cause.
Yeah.
That's a scary statistic.
It's a big jump. And it just shows how serious the health risks are with these foods. It's not just empty calories. They're formulated in a way that messes with your metabolism, increases your risk for all sorts of chronic diseases, heart disease, even neurodegenerative diseases.
So it's not just about feeling sluggish after a bag of chips. It's about long-term health.
Exactly. It's the long game.
It's scary because these foods, they're everywhere.
Everywhere you look.
They're so readily available.
And Americans, we eat way more of this stuff than other developed countries.
Really?
Yeah. Food Inc., too, points out that UPFs make up like 58% of the average American diet,
Wow.
compared to like 15 to 29% in other developed nations.
That's a huge difference.
It is. So we've got our work cut out for us.
Yeah, so we've got powerful corporations, a pandemic that exposed all these cracks in the system, and we have food that's practically engineered to make us sick.
It's a bit of a bleak picture.
I'm trying to be optimistic. Is there any reason to be optimistic about the future of food?
I mean, it's definitely complex, but Food Inc., too, does offer some glimmers of hope. There are people and organizations out there fighting for a better food system.
Yeah, they talked about the Fair Food program, and I feel like that was a real win.
Absolutely huge win.
They were making strides with working conditions for farm workers.
It's a great model.
Can you tell us a bit more about how that works?
Yeah, so the Fair Food Program, it's a combination of market incentives and consumer pressure.
Okay.
And it ensures that participating growers meet these higher labor standards,
Sure.
things like fair wages, safe working conditions, zero tolerance for forced labor.
Wow.
It's really a testament to the power of collective action. When consumers and workers come together, they can create real change within the system.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
No, definitely not.
There are people working to change things.
Absolutely.
And there are things that we as consumers can do
Totally.
to support them.
100%. And speaking of choices, remember how we were talking about how those ultra-processed foods, they're practically engineered to make us overeat?
Right, yeah.
Food, Inc., too, makes this pretty bold comparison. They liken the tactics of the food industry to big tobacco.
Whoa, hold on. Big food compared to big tobacco.
Yeah, it's a strong statement for sure.
That's
But it speaks to how serious this issue is. I mean, just like big tobacco downplayed the health risks of smoking for decades.
right.
There's a lot of concern that the food industry is doing the same thing with these ultra-processed foods. They're using marketing and lobbying to influence public opinion and to delay regulation.
Yeah. And just like with smoking, we're seeing the consequences now, right? Obesity rates are going up, diabetes, all these diet-related diseases.
Unfortunately, yeah.
It's like we're trapped in this vicious cycle where corporations create food designed to make us overeat, and then we get sick and healthcare costs go up.
It's this complex web of interconnected problems, but awareness is really the first step.
Right.
Once you understand how it all works, then you can start making more informed choices
Exactly.
and advocating for policies that put public health before corporate profits.
And that's where I feel like the research comes in.
Exactly. The research goes even deeper into the science behind these cravings.
Right.
It's not just about liking the taste. It's about how these foods are literally hijacking our brains, triggering those reward centers, and creating this cycle of craving and consumption.
Right, like that one study about
Yeah, exactly, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that study about how just looking at pictures of ultra-processed foods can trigger those cravings.
It's crazy, and it makes you realize just how powerful these marketing tactics are.
Absolutely. And Food, Inc., too,
Mm-hmm.
it really drives home this point. They talk about these marketing campaigns targeted at kids
Yeah, yeah.
and how these companies, they spend billions of dollars to make these products as appealing as possible.
It's almost like they're exploiting our biology.
In a way, yeah, they're tapping into these deep-seated desires,
Huh.
for salt, for sugar, for fat,
Right, right.
things that our bodies naturally crave, but they're engineering these foods to make those cravings even more intense.
So it's not just about individual choices. It's almost like a system designed to keep us hooked.
Yeah, it's this complex interplay between our biology, marketing, and corporate strategy. And it can be really hard to break free from that cycle.
I know. I feel like we've been talking about a lot of the problems with the food industry.
Yeah.
The corporate power, the health risks, the marketing tactics. It can be a little overwhelming.
It's a lot to digest.
But Food Inc., too, it did offer some glimmers of hope.
It did, yeah.
Right. They talked about the coalition of Immokalee workers
Yeah,
and their Fair Food program, and that was a real success story.
absolutely. It's proof that change is possible.
They were able to improve the working conditions for farm workers in Florida.
Yeah, and it's a great example of how grassroots organizing and consumer pressure can really force corporations to change their behavior.
That's inspiring. It gives me hope that we're not totally powerless.
Yeah, we have more power than we realize.
So it's not just about individual choices, it's about collective action. It's about using our voices and our wallets to support a better food system.
Exactly, and that brings us back to those ultra-processed foods
Right.
and the tactics that the food industry uses to keep us coming back for more.
Food Inc., too, actually made a pretty bold comparison.
Oh, yeah.
They likened the food industry's tactics to big tobacco.
It's a serious accusation,
It is.
but it really highlights the gravity of the situation.
Yeah.
For decades, big tobacco downplayed the health risks of smoking and misled the public.
Right.
And there's a growing concern that the food industry is doing the same thing with these ultra-processed foods.
Yeah, like they're using marketing and lobbying to influence public perception and delay regulations.
Exactly, and we're already seeing the consequences, right? With rising rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease.
It's almost like we're repeating history, but with food this time.
Yeah, it's this cycle of corporate profit over public health.
And it's costing us all in the long run.
Yeah, it's not just about individual health. It's about the health of our society as a whole.
So what can we do about it? I mean, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all of this.
I know, it's a lot. But remember, knowledge is power.
Right.
The more we understand about how these systems work, the better equipped we are to make informed choices.
And to advocate for change.
Exactly. And that's where the research we have comes in.
Yes, the research, that's the next step in our deep dive.
We're going to take a closer look at the science behind those cravings,
Right.
why we're so drawn to these ultra-processed foods, and how we can break free from that cycle.
All right, let's do it. Let's dive into the research. Okay, so we're armed with knowledge about the food system and how these ultra-processed foods are designed.
Right, how they kind of hijack our brains.
Yeah, so what can we actually do about it?
Well, it's easy to feel powerless, right, against these giant corporations.
It is. It's like, what difference can I, one person, make?
But Food, Inc., too, actually gives us some steps.
Okay.
Some concrete things we can do to make a difference.
Okay.
And it starts with consumer choice. That's a big one.
Okay, so being mindful of what we buy.
Exactly. Using your dollars to support the businesses that align with your values,
Okay.
even if that means, spending a bit more.
Right. Or going out of your way to find them.
Yeah, because every dollar you spend is like a vote,
I like that, a vote for the kind of food system you want to see.
Exactly.
So look for companies that practice ethical sourcing,
Uh-huh.
sustainable practices,
Yeah.
treating workers fairly.
All of that.
But what about people who can't afford, to buy all organic or shop at those fancy stores?
Right. So that's where supporting local food systems comes in.
Oh, okay.
Things like farmers markets,
Yeah, okay.
CSA programs, maybe even growing some of your own food.
Those are good ideas. I mean, can that really make a difference?
Oh, for sure. I mean, not only are you supporting local farmers,
Okay.
you're reducing your carbon footprint as well.
All right. So we vote with our dollars. We support local.
Yep.
What else can we do?
Well, don't underestimate the power of advocacy.
Okay. So like what?
Contact your elected officials. Support organizations that are fighting for food justice.
Right.
Talk to your friends and family. Spread the word.
Get those conversations going.
Exactly. The more people are aware of these issues, the more momentum we can build.
So it's not just about changing our own habits. It's about being part of a bigger movement.
Totally. A movement for a more just and sustainable food system.
That's a good way to put it.
And remember, it all starts with education, with awareness.
Right.
Once you understand where your food comes from and the forces at play.
Right. All that stuff we talked about.
Exactly.
You can make choices that align with your values.
Exactly. So, listeners, what's the key takeaway here?
Yeah. What's the one thing you should remember?
Take a closer look at your food choices.
Okay.
Do your research, ask questions. Where does this food come from?
Yeah. Where was it produced? Who produced it?
What are the environmental and social impacts?
Right. Think about all of that.
And remember, every time you sit down to eat,
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
you have a choice. You can choose to support a system that prioritizes profit over people and the planet.
Right?
Or you can choose to be part of a movement for something better.
Something better. I like that.
The power really is in your hands.
That is a perfect way to end this deep dive. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And until next time, happy eating.